That's right. You see the beautiful thumbnail. You see the question. It's Orange and Blue today. We're presented by Sean Payton, Cecil, Lammey, Andrew Mason. And is Russell Wilson fixed, Mace? We had this question entering this season. Would Sean Payton be the guy? We're 4 weeks in. Is Sean Payton the guy that fixed Russell Wilson?
I mean, if you look at where Russell Wilson is, he's basically back to the level he was at the first 4 weeks of the 2021 season in Seattle before he got injured, right? I mean, across the board, in some ways, I mean, you go by EPA per play, for example, expected points added, he's actually ahead of where he was. A pretty raw number is touchdown passes. That's 9 through 4 games. He didn't get to 9 until the 14th week of last year. So, based on what we saw the last 2 weeks of the 2022 season, what we've seen this year, I think we realize now completely what was the glitch in the system. And the glitch in the system is going to be at Empower Field at Mile High on Sunday wearing green and white.
Yes, he is, with his nice goatee. And that's the nice thing about Russell Wilson and Sean Payton
don't knock the goatee, man.
Well, you can pull it off.
Thank you.
Not everybody can pull off the goatee. We know that. The nice thing about Sean Payton is that, and this shows the sign of a good designer, right? I think of Kyle Shanahan and working with multiple quarterbacks, where you have your system that you want to run, but what can your guy do? What does he do best? And then what is he doesn't do as good? Stay away from that and build this around Russell Wilson's strengths, which is getting out on the run, taking the occasional deep shot. And Russ, to his credit, is responding by getting rid of the ball when he needs to, for the most part. I mean, 1 sack. I know it's Chicago, whatever. We've got to go against who they played against. And you saw that 1 sack, getting rid of the ball. These things have worked with Russell Wilson.
And we've seen it throughout the season, right? Not just against Chicago. I mean, the concern we had after week 1 against the Raiders was, okay, where's the deep ball? Well, we're seeing the deep ball. And in particular, we're seeing it to Marvin Mims Jr. And there's another thing for those who say, oh, Russ can't elevate. He's not making players around him better. Have you watched Marvin Mims Jr. and how he's played? Now, some of that's on Mims. Yes, he's got a lot of talent. But in terms of getting him up to that level through 4 games, Russell Wilson certainly played a part in that. We know how good historically Russell Wilson is at throwing the deep ball, and he and Mims already seem to have that cohesion, that connection. I mean, really the question that you have now is, how on earth is Marvin Mims only playing no more than 17 snaps in a game? He's got right now, I think he's sitting on 65 offensive snaps. I put something in my piece at denversports.com that kind of broke down his production on a per snap basis. I mean, he's, in terms of players who've played fewer than 100 snaps, especially at the wide receiver position, Marvin Mims is lapping the field here. He's he's extremely efficient for the work he's getting, which tells you, okay, you might want to get him a few more snaps. The question is, at whose expense are you giving him those snaps? And that's a wider discussion.
How do you get there? I think that's a discussion for closer to the trade deadline, perhaps. And we'll see what this Broncos team can do. But the thing with Mims that I think about, Mace, is like all the time that he missed. Imagine if he hadn't missed the time. Because this chemistry, like this is weird. We don't usually see the chemistry between a QB and a rookie look this good, this fast. It's very unusual.
Yeah, it's to both of their credit. And I think the other thing that also comes into play is the Broncos with Mims and his skill set, they found somebody who seems to fit Russell Wilson really well, right? Somebody who, somebody who's got it, breaks off the line really fast, has, eventually I think he can have a lot more branches on the route tree. Eventually I think he'll be a better blocker. I think those two things are probably why we haven't seen him play more than he has. But at some point, I think you maybe have to live with some of the lesser aspects of his game to get him on the field more and get him more opportunities to stretch the field. Because if you're going to run the ball as you'd like to, a key way to do that, as you know, Cecil, is you get that vertical stretch guy who forces the safety back, creates a little more space at the second and third levels, And all of a sudden, Julian McLaughlin, who we both love, has a little more room to roam in there,
Yeah.
perhaps, if you see more of him. I mean, I'm kind of getting to the I'm very much getting to the play the kids mindset with this team. It's, hey, the energy, the excitement of youth, the possibilities of it. I think what was it in My Cousin Vinny, the Utes, right? Play the Utes, as Joe Pesci would say.
Right.
Yeah, there you go. Play the kids, play the Utes.
Well, it's simpatico as well. And a lot of people don't necessarily think that. But if you're backing up the defense, you've got more room to run. If you run effectively, now the defense tries to suck up and you go over the top of their head. And that's where, when I've told people, because you mentioned 65 snaps on the year, that's a game. He's played 1 game's worth of snaps in 4 games. You got to change that. But the more they run, the better they run, the more commitment they have to the run. I think that means more Marvin Mims. And whether it's Sutton or Judy, sorry, it's working with Mims.
Marvin Mims off the play action deep, right? I mean, this is a tale as old as time. It's, you know what? It's the Raiders of the 70s, right? You get the ground game going, and then you take the play action shot over the top to Cliff Branch. I know probably Broncos fans don't want to hear that, but that was very effective for a long time, and that concept still works. Hey, that concept helped fuel the Mike Shanahan offenses, right? You pound, and then you go over the top. You get the play fake boot action, and all of a sudden you've got Rod Smith 1-on-1 against Eugene Robinson in Super Bowl 33. Eugene Robinson having had the worst night of his life the night before. But you can catch a safety off guard, even if they weren't out on Biscayne Boulevard looking for a little fun the previous night, right? I mean, That's the possibilities really open up here if you get Marvin Mims out there more and take those deep shots a little bit more often. Look, I mean, you step back actually for the offense as a whole. I mean, you're getting 2.5 offensive touchdowns per game. For most of the Nathaniel Hackett era, those 15 games, it was, I believe, 1.47 offensive touchdowns per game. So you're literally getting, I mean, you're getting a touchdown more than you got, for most of last season, right? I mean, that's pretty impressive. You're doing a great job when you're pulling that off.
Yeah. And I think Broncos country need to go on the Russ bus, man. I don't think there's enough people on the Russ bus, Mace, for a few reasons. One, they just see last year and they make that wide, broad stroke of like, oh, well, Russ sucks now. No, he doesn't. He didn't even really last year. It just wasn't working with Hackett and it didn't fit. Russ can still work. It can move forward. You can move forward with Russell Wilson, hopefully with the young guy grooming behind him, developing behind him. But the Russ bus, if they're 3-1, I don't even know if we're really talking about this because everyone's already on the Russ bus, but get on board. You can get on board with this guy.
If you didn't have the number 32 defense in the league, you would be talking about being 3-1. I mean, I'm not saying that you would have beaten Miami with a better defense. I think you wouldn't have given up 70, but Miami was on point that day, to their credit. But if you're 3-1 and Russell Wilson has 9 touchdown passes, if his passer rating is in triple digits like it is right now, nobody's having the discussion of, you're going to take a quarterback next year. Oh, you're going to move on with Russ. It's very much Russ is fixed and Russ has become the Russ that he was. Now, the question I think that does bear asking is this: for Russell Wilson, is this all that there is? I mean, because right now he's playing well. He's probably in that second tier of quarterbacks around the league right now. You'd say probably if you're stacking them 1 to 32, he's probably somewhere 10 to 15 on balance, right? So
yeah, top half of the league.
Yes, top half of the league on the high side of the mid tier. Is that enough to continue going down that path? Is there room for him to grow and have that second prime in his late 30s, like we've seen from Drew Brees, Peyton Manning, Tom Brady, quarterbacks like that? Aaron Rodgers had a second prime as well. That's when he had his back-to-back MVPs. So can he do that? Is that in him? I'll say this. Sean Payton said a couple of things on Monday that were interesting. One was talking about the false starts and mentioning the QB cadence, which, yeah, that's going to be on Russell Wilson, right? But he also talked about how Russ had something in common with Drew Brees in terms of his demeanor in the huddle and that belief of getting everyone to believe that they can come back, right? And that's something that caught my ear listening to it as well. Anytime Sean Payton makes a Drew Brees comp, that's I don't know about you, Steve, but I think that's pretty significant.
Well, and I don't think, if memory serves, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, Mace, but I don't think he's really made that connection yet. We in the media have been like, can Russell Wilson be like Drew Brees? Yeah, that's fine. We can do that. I do not believe Sean Payton's ever done that. And Sean Payton, I believe, Mace, everything's intentional. Like what he says is with intent, maybe with a couple lattes, but it's not like he just stumbled into it. He's not going to compliment Russell Wilson in that way, because that is a high compliment. He's not going to do that unless that's what he thinks.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's not out there just for bleeps and giggles, right?
Mm-hmm.
So that I thought was pretty interesting. That now it's a question of where it goes from here. I'll say this: I think this game Sunday is going to be a really nice litmus test for the progress. That's why I think it's worth asking about, is Russ fixed? The answer probably is he's on the right track. But you're about to face the best defense that you've seen all year, maybe the best defense that you're going to see all the way through the season when the New York Jets come in. And we're going to dive into that matchup more over the next 3 days. But this game's probably going to take on a different tenor than the ones that we've seen before. Both teams, I'd say, in a pretty desperate spot, sitting at 1-3.
And I think the next 2 games, and we can get into this conversation as the week goes on, Mace, but like you're kind of preparing for both, because you won't have as much time when you prepare for Kansas City because it's a Thursday night game. So you've got 2 games in those 10-day stretch, in the 4 days, right? Basically. So that Jets game against a very tough defense, when fans say the Chiefs look beatable because of the Jets game, that's not untrue, but it's also that Jets defense is legit. So I think these next 2 games will tell the tale of Russell Wilson, the rest of the season, the trade deadline, etc.
No doubt. And I don't think you're looking at a scenario where you're going to be able to get back in it if you lose both of these games. I mean, maybe miracle you're 3-5 because you win those back-to-back home games against Green Bay and Kansas City. But if you don't beat the Chiefs in Arrowhead, I don't think it's necessarily going to get much better in the return. So we're fixing to find out, right?
We are fixing to find out. Thank you, Gary Kubiak, for that eternal saying. But the O-line woes for this team as we continue on with today's program. What can they do against the Jets? We had suggested perhaps upon the return of Greg Dulcich, maybe there's some more fullback involved in this offense. But Manhurts has got to be out there. You've got to have multiple blockers. You got to be chipping guys, the front 7 for the Jets and the back end. I'd say all 3 levels of this Jet defense can be a problem. And the O-line woes, Russ is getting rid of the ball fast. But man, I think their hands are going to be up. I think it could be problematic if your O-line woes continue.
Yeah, and the other thing also in terms of getting the ball out fast against the Jets defensive backs, I mean, where's Sauce going to be, right? I mean, honestly, are you thinking about putting Sauce Gardner on Marvin Mims Jr. for the plays that Mims is out there?
I would.
If you're the Jets.
From the Jets, yeah.
I absolutely would find a way to do that. I think you want right now. I think Marvin Mims is your number 1 threat on the Bronco offense. If you're the Jets and you're watching the film, who's the guy that should put the fear of God into us? Believe it or not, it's the young man who's played only 4 games. Right. I think he's scared. He's going to scare some teams. And but if you put Sauce on him, then everyone else is going to step up. You're not going to have Greg Dulcich for at least 1 more week here, so that's going to neutralize the pass catching threat from the tight end position. This is problematic. I don't know. And also, I mean, we're excited about Jaleel McLaughlin's potential. You may even have Javonte Williams back, depending on the hip pointer that he's dealing with right now. But look, I don't know if you're going to be able to run the ball as effectively as you did last week in Chicago. And even over the course of the season, the ground game has only been effective in spurts and bursts, right? It really didn't start popping until the Bears game. And you can attribute some of that to the quality of the opponent that you were facing there and the lack of quality of their defense.
Well, he could go from a Bears game getting limited touches and 10 yards of carry to perhaps starting against the Jets and getting 2 yards of carry.
Yes.
We love McLaughlin, but this Jets defense, if there's anyone that could bottle up that guy, it's them.
They're big and they're fast. I mean, this is probably right up there with Washington in terms of the quality of the defensive line. But I think the thing that separates the Jets is they're better at the back two levels than Washington was. Now, hey, Broncos did have some success against Washington, put up 33 points. But we saw as the game went on, Washington's front ground down the Broncos. And that's the thing that you worry about. And again, you've got the front plus on the back end, they're gonna limit some things. So again, a game that's going to take on a completely different tenor than the ones that we saw the last couple of weeks. On the Broncos defensive side, first things first, we got to mention the move that happened. Isang Bassi let go by the Broncos. They need a spot for Dwayne Washington. We talked yesterday about roster moves that are coming, right? Because there's going to be a roster shuffle.
Right.
Dwayne Washington clearly at running back, this is a guy who's going to play because of his special teams role. If the Broncos wanted to keep using him, they had to move him to the 53 because they were out of practice squad activations for Dwayne Washington. They'd already used all three. So Washington is up on the 53. Isang Bassi, who, got benched. Make no mistake, that was a benching on Sunday with Jaquan McMillan playing in his spot as the nickel corner. Isang Bassi, no longer a Denver Bronco as of right now.
Yeah, as of right now. And what's weird, Mace, and I don't want to derail the conversation, but just from even a fantasy lens, I know this is defensive, but the preseason standouts haven't necessarily been doing it in the regular season. It's been very odd because usually we get clues and we're waiting, watch out. And Bassi had the 3 picks. So let's make it 4. And now he doesn't have a team.
Okay. The thing is, though, on picks, those are not really reliable things, right? And sometimes it's one of them was just right place, right time, Johnny on the spot, right? Probably the best one that he had, I thought, was the one in Arizona, which came on a subsequent third down after he'd been beaten on the previous third down. And I believe it was Rondale Moore ran the same route, but he slipped. Now, Bassi was playing it better and was in the right spot to get the pick, and you like the way he learned from that. But still, I mean, you kind of take it in the context of, all right, first one, he got beat, second one, he got the pick, but the receiver did slip. So with someone like Jaleel McLaughlin, what he was doing looked like it could translate more, right? So there is a preseason stud who has made it translate. And then you look at other preseason studs, Matt Henningsen and Elijah Garcia. Elijah Garcia just hasn't gotten enough reps, right?
Correct.
But from what I'm seeing on the defensive line, I'm content giving him more reps because, again, I think I want to see some of the younger guys play.
Yeah, play the kids includes Garcia,
right?
Includes Benito.
And Matt Henningsen, who had a good preseason, he's already got 2 passes defensed at the line of scrimmage over the course of the season, right? So I think I don't necessarily think that it's a case of, all these guys didn't make it translate. But I think with Bassi, he didn't make it translate. And then the other thing that came up and I think why he basically got benched after the Miami game, just missed tackle after missed tackle, right? I mean, and you had another option that you liked in Jaquan McMillan and you wanted to take a look at. I think with McMillan, the audition may go on a little bit in part because I think when K'Wan Williams does come back in the nickel corner role, I think you're finding out, okay, can McMillan bounce outside and maybe push Damari Mathis? Because McMillan had a full training camp. He can step in, maybe have a wider role. I don't know when Riley Moss is going to be ready for that after missing all of training camp.
Right. Who do they trust? Right now it's McMillan for sure. As we talk defensive adjustments to wrap up the show, when do you think Baron Browning's going to come back? And you just mentioned K'Wan Williams. And we're expecting... I at least expect we'll be out there on Wednesday, but I expect to see Justin Simmons pretty soon. Seemed like he was coming back, and then Friday he didn't practice. I'm expecting Josie Jewell will be back pretty soon.
Yeah.
But if you get Jewell, Simmons, K'Wan, and Browning back within the next few weeks, this defense may not be 32 anymore.
It's got a lot of digging to get out of 32 is the problem. They've put themselves in a pretty nice hole here. This is like a baseball team that gets through the first month of the season and they're like 8-22. Okay, you can get back into it, but it's going to take a lot of work. You're going to need like a 15-game winning streak in there to make yourself relevant again.
Rocktober.
Yeah, there's a saying in baseball that you don't want to be 10 games out and 10 games under 500. When you've got that combination, that's when you're basically in deep and it's hard to come back. Now you can. Rockies of 09 were at that point once 10 games back of a playoff spot, 10 games under 500. They fired Clint Hurdle. They brought in Jim Tracy and boom, they went on a run. So, well, I think I may have advocated for something that a lot of unwittingly advocate for something that I didn't necessarily want to see. But at the same time, Clint Hurdle been the manager for several years by then. He'd not just gotten on the job the way that Vance Joseph has, right? So I
gotten back on the job.
But yeah, I just kind of I unwittingly made the case for something I don't necessarily believe in, which is the early season firing. Pardon me, sorry.
Yeah. So you know, I
got clipped. Yes. See, that's my system reacting to coming to that. Like you sometimes have that. Sometimes you have that moment where you realize you just kind of made someone else's point, and you're just the only thing that runs through your mind is just an obscenity. Right. You're like, oh,
Vance Joseph should not be fired in the early season. Discuss.
Oh yeah.
Sometimes you got to change it up, but if you get these defenders back, like that's where I think there's hope for this Broncos defense. Like you've got some really talented guys that you've been missing, and K1, we don't talk much about it. Maybe we should, Mace, but I think that K1 injury and missing K1 Williams and what he can do, it's significant for this back end of the Broncos defense.
He's a top 5 nickel corner, and he also brings you a nice little threat as a blitzer from the nickel corner spot. And the blitzing certainly hasn't really worked all that well for Vance Joseph and the defense so far this season. But when you have somebody like K1 Williams, perhaps it's got a chance to work a little bit better. He reads those situations. He reads the blocking and the adjustments very well. It's something that was a strength of his in San Francisco. The Broncos really didn't explore it much last year. And we saw some signs that they would be looking at that with K1 before he got injured. I think it's something that they'll come back to.
Okay. It is orange and blue today. We are presented by Sean Payton. Be back out there on Wednesday and see what the practice holds for us. See how the locker room reacts. The Broncos have 2 incredibly important games coming up in the next several days. We'll see how that works. He's Andrew Mason. You follow him on all the socials at Mace Denver. I am at Cecil Lammey saying, do the YouTube things, like, comment, share, subscribe, hit the notification bell so that you never miss a vid. And we appreciate you. OBT is BFD, everyone. Join us. Stay tuned and stay frosty.